So in this video I'm going to go through how Thiago Motta would set up Manchester United in possession, which players would suit his system and roles, as well as going over potential issues and whether he'd be a good appointment. So let's cut the waffle and get straight to it. So Thiago Motta uses what you'd call on paper a 4-2-3-1, but if you follow the tactical side of the game, and Bologna specifically, you'll know that formations themselves don't really tell you much, but if you do watch Bologna you'll understand the nuances of Motta's system, particularly in possession and in the build-up phase, which you're going to be talking about in this video. And the most unusual and eye-catching thing about Motta's system is the vertical movement of the centre-backs. It's similar to what we see John Stones do at Manchester City, pushing up into the midfield line, but Motta's system is even more fluid, with both centre-backs, whether it's Lukemi, Bukema or Calafiori, playing a pass before then making a forward movement into the midfield line. But why does Motta want his centre-backs to do this? Well, it makes sense when you think about it from the pressing side's point of view. If you are pressing Bologna, your forward line, either your centre forward, attacking midfielder or wide attackers, are going to have the responsibility of man-to-man pressing the centre-backs. However, very rarely will you see the forwards diligently follow players they are man-to-man pressing after they've played the ball, as the opposition usually do in their midfield line. The forward line usually stays set in their defensive shape, retaining a higher position in your defensive third, and so by instructing your centre-backs to push up the pitch vertically into the midfield line, you are now able to create a free man or multiple free men against a man-to-man press. And so how would this translate to Manchester United? Well, before we get into that, if you like me are excited about the upcoming Euros and you want to pick up one of the Euro 2024 jerseys, then go over to Jersey FIFA. Not only have they got the new season's jerseys that will be coming out in the summer, they've also got retro jerseys as well, and I will be talking about one of my favourite jerseys on the whole site later on in the video. But if you do want to check out the site after this video, a link will be in my Instagram bio, which I will leave linked in the description, and use code Atlantis at checkout for a discount. Well, I think this kind of free-roaming libero centre-back role would suit Lisandro Martinez, but also Dalot and Shaw if he ever gets fit. Because when the centre-backs push up the pitch, it's up to either the full-backs or the central midfielders to drop into these deeper positions, where they do need to have a high level of progressive passing ability. Starting off in that conventional centre-back position, as soon as the pass is played, Martinez can then look to make a vertical run into the midfield line, with either the central midfielder, let's say Mainu for example, or the left-back Luke Shaw or Malacia, if either decide to exist at any point, dropping in to cover that central position. But crucially, you don't want that player who drops into Martinez's position to drop into the exact same area. You want them slightly wider, and this is so that either the opposition's wide midfielder or central midfielder who follows them initially continues to follow them and gets dragged out of position, rather than just handing them over to the forward, because obviously otherwise the centre forward would just hold his position with Mainu or Shaw, and the central midfielder or wide midfielder would just follow Martinez. Essentially, Motta's strategy is to create a free man in the midfield line by having the centre-backs move off of the forwards who are man-to-man pressing them, and using wider or deeper movements from his central midfielders to drag the opposition's central midfielders out of that central zone. And Martinez moving into the midfield line works perfectly because of course he used to be a central midfielder, and so he has a technical ability and positional understanding to seamlessly interchange between the defensive and midfield lines. But really in Motta's system, the whole back line would need to have the versatility to be able to move into the midfield and pick up these central positions, be it Martinez at centre-back or Dalot or Shaw at full-back. The more fluid the positional rotations are, the harder it's going to be for the opposition to implement a man-to-man press, because with the centre-backs and full-backs pushing up vertically, if the players who initially are designated to man-to-man press them in the opposition's forward line don't follow their vertical movements forward and get goal side, and their central midfielders get dragged out of position by the deeper or wider movements of Motta's central midfielders, then this will open up space and give United a free man in the centre of the pitch to then progress the ball through. But the issue I have with Motta's build-up strategy, in comparison to the Zerbis for example, is that it is a lot slower with less intent when it comes to playing through the centre of the pitch, which I think is the key to progressing the ball forward through a pressing shape, particularly in the Premier League. And this is because I think most sides in the Premier League will resort to a zonal press against Motta's United should I say, rather than a man-to-man one. And when I do my video on how Roberto De Zerbi would set up Manchester United, you'll see why I think his possession strategy, in particular his intent with playing through the centre of the pitch, is a lot more effective. I just think De Zerbi's strategy of using those third man ping pong like passes to play through a press rather than around it is a superior tactical strategy, and I can see Motta's United dominating possession without creating much of substance in a game, just as Louis van Gaal's United would do, back in the mid-2010s, but a part of Motta's possession setup which I do really like, once again comes down to his relationist approach. Whereas Zerbi has a very strict positional setup, like with his centre-backs we see Motta giving his midfielders, but particularly his centre-forward, a lot more positional freedom. Zirkzee's role in Motta's side is crucial. His movement deep allows him to become a free man in certain situations, giving Bologna an overload if the centre-back decides not to follow Zirkzee into these deeper positions. However, if the centre-back does follow him deep, this vacates a space in the back line for the wide attackers, or usually the attacking midfielder behind, to push up into. And that's why we often see Lewis Ferguson higher up the pitch playing almost as a centre-forward when Bologna have the ball, whereas Zirkzee is taken up a deeper position in more of a playmaking role. However, the issue I see with this is that I just don't think that Hojlund suits his kind of false 9 role. He wouldn't be terrible, as this season he has shown he's got the hold-up play to drop into deeper positions and link the play with his back to goal. However, I think for this role Motta needs a centre-forward in the mould of an Anthony Martial or a Zirkzee, or maybe even like a Jadon Sancho, which United don't have at the moment. Someone who is better than Hojlund technically in congested areas, in the centre of the pitch, and has the vision and passing ability of a midfielder. But I do think Hojlund can still play a role in Motta's side. But rather than starting in a central position in the middle third during the build-up phase, I think Motta could use Hojlund in a wide position to start with, on the right side, as he and either Garnacho or Rashford on the left can pin the opposition's fullbacks backwards. Now he's not playing as a right winger at all, he's just taken up this position in this phase of play for the balance of the whole team. In the final third he's still playing the same role that he plays now, picking up central positions inside of the box. It's just in the middle third, I'd rather have Hojlund making these diagonal runs in behind the opposition's back line, compared with dropping deep into the midfield. If your ball knowledge is elite, you'll remember that Roberto Martinez used Lukaku in this wide right role against Arsenal for tactical purposes during the 2013-2014 season, and Lukaku absolutely destroyed Arsenal down their right side. If you do want me to go into more detail about Hojlund in this wide forward role, let me know in the comment section. You can also check out the video analysis I did on Zirkzee playing a false 9 role for United, that will also be linked in the comment section and description as well. So we know that the centre forward in Motta's system is a false 9, but who would play that role for United? Well, it's probably easier if I first fill in the other positions. Andre Onana, Dalot and Martinez and Shaw, if they ever return to reality, basically pick themselves and would suit Motta's style of play perfectly. United would need a centre-back and a central midfielder to partner Kobbie Mainoo, but I'll come on to which specific players I think would be a good fit in a separate video, so make sure you subscribe to the channel for that. But this is where we come on to 2 players who I think would thrive under Motta, Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes. Mount in particular I think would excel under Motta, as Motta needs a central advanced midfielder who has the athleticism off the ball to make vertical runs forward, ahead of the deeper movement of the false 9, just as Lewis Ferguson does. However, this role also requires a player with a high level of tactical understanding, knowing when to drop deeper to provide a passing option out of the defensive third, and when to make a movement ahead. In the final third, as Mount showed in the 21-22 season with Chelsea, he has a finishing ability when arriving in and around the box to be one of the side's main goal scorers. Bruno Fernandes could also perform this Ferguson second striker role as well, or I could also see him being used in that Zirkzee false 9 role, starting high alongside the centre backs, but like Roberto Firmino did for Liverpool, dropping into the space behind the midfield line. And this would probably work incredibly well, as the opposition is not going to want to allow Fernandes to be the free man between the lines, because of how good he is at receiving possession and finding those through balls for runners in behind, which in turn is going to see a player from the opposition's back line follow him deeper or force a midfielder higher up to drop off and cover this space. But in general, Motta's relationist approach in possession requires a lot of interchanging of positions, and so having 2 advanced midfielders like Fernandes and Mount will give the side plenty of rotation options in possession. Hojlund, Garnacho or Rashford can hold these positions high up in the build-up phase, pinning the opposition's fullbacks backwards and stretching the back line with their movements in behind.